And we are live. Thank you so much for joining us. This is the Fantasy Fanatics MMA podcast. Same show, new time, new day. Appreciate you joining us. I am James Lynch. He is JHK. If you guys haven't watched the show before, basically we preview an upcoming notable fight. And on today's edition, we're going to be previewing the really interesting middleweight fight between Sean Strickland and Luke Rockhold, which is going to be coming up here in a bit. Don't have the date handy, but I'll get to that in a second here. But if you guys are watching, submit questions in the YouTube chat. We'll get to them as soon as we're done the breakdown. Typically, we like to stick around the fight we're talking about, but if you guys have other questions, I know there's some breaking news that happened before we hopped on here. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but we're mainly going to focus on this middleweight fight. JHK, how you doing, buddy? How's everything going?
Good, man. First off the top, man, congratulations on the new addition to your family. And yeah, they always say 2 is better than 1, right?
It certainly is. I got 2 boys creating a little Lynch army here at the household, but thank you very much. Yeah, that's why we were off last week, which was funny because and it wasn't like, I'm a pretty organized guy, right? If I'm going to put something out there on social media, I'm going to make sure it's happening. So if you guys remember last week on Twitter, hey, we're changing the time, we're doing this new day. And then I get the note from my wife being like, oh, yeah, the baby's coming today. It's not coming on Sunday. It's going to come on Tuesday. So that's why we had to miss last week. So appreciate everyone tuning in. I know it might take a bit for everyone to come over to the new time slot. It's all good, though. We're happy to be here, happy to be talking in the evening and doing all this. But let's get into this fight, man. I'm really excited. Sean Strickland, Luke Rockhold, kind of a fight that came out of left field, right? We knew that Sean Strickland obviously has been on a roll. He got that big one over Uriah Hall, and we'll dig into his fight in a sec. But, Luke Rockhold, what did we hear for, it seemed like a year. I only want money fights. I only want a big name. That doesn't really fit the mold with Sean Strickland. I think it got to the point where Luke's like UFC's like, you got to fight someone, Luke Rockhold. Like, come on, man. Like, if you want to come back, you got to fight someone. You can't be picking and choosing whatever. So I think it was a bit of a compromise on both sides as far as we got here. But I mean, on paper, this is an amazing fight. Sean Strickland has been on a roll at middleweight. Luke Rockhold, a former middleweight champion, looking to get back in the win column and hasn't fought since the knockout loss to Jan Blachowicz. So just your thoughts on this fight itself. I think it's so interesting to me because there's so many good fights coming up, and I feel like this one's kind of flying under the radar.
It is definitely flying under the radar. And I'm just wondering, man, throughout the last year, why did nobody want to fight Luke Rockhold? It's like if you look at his past, 5 fights, not a very good record at all. You know what I mean? And his performances have somewhat dwindled. It seems like he's on the decline. So you would think fighters would want to hop on when another fighter is on the decline, but it just doesn't seem that way. Maybe it's because the risk reward of it. And as a fan, I understand that a little bit better of the risk reward type thing, right? So maybe Rockhold, in behind the scenes, he's doing something in training, and there's word spreading that he's good and he's better. Who knows? But Sean Strickland, he's a crazy person. So when you got a crazy person, he'll fight anybody. It doesn't matter as long as it propels him. And that's the big question: will it propel Sean Strickland, or will it even propel Luke Rockhold if he wins this fight?
Well, I actually think it's the opposite. I think it's Rockhold not wanting to fight guys. I think the UFC's like, look, we want to give you a return fight, and Rockhold's like, look, it's not a big enough name. Remember, Chimaev was an option. I think for what, well, mind you, in Chimaev's case, I think not only COVID, but I think he wanted to fight at 170, so that was a fight that didn't materialize. And then I don't know what other names were out there. I said when he came back, I thought Weidman would have been a good fight prior to his injury. That's a rematch. It's a big name. I think that kind of fits the mold of what Rockhold was looking for, but here we are with Sean Strickland, and we can play the what if game all day, but I'm just happy we get this fight because they don't like each other, right? Luke's kind of I'll say one thing about Rockhold since his sort of losing streak and even him being off. It's kind of become a bit unlikable. I mean, I'll tell you, I did the media scrum when he fought Jan Blachowicz. I was there for that fight and didn't give me a very good interview. And I've interviewed Luke before, and he definitely, I don't know what's happened over the last little bit, but he's kind of becoming a bit unlikable. And I think that adds to this a little bit more. Sean Strickland's becoming unlikable to a certain crowd as well with some of the stuff that he's saying, the very controversial stuff. So it's kind of an interesting case of 2 fighters going toe to toe here. But as far as how this came together, it was just a case of Rockhold needed a fight. Strickland's been on a roll. I think it makes a lot of sense there. But let's dig into Sean Strickland. And before we do that, got to remind everyone, and I forgot to do this off the top, John. I missed 1 week. I forget the most important thing. Download the Fantasy Fanatics MMA app. This is where we put our picks on every single week. And, we go toe-to-toe with each other. So we will be talking about our underdog picks later on in the show. And I think I put my picks in this time early. So I'll have to double check there. But we'll find out when it comes up on the screen later to see if I did that. But anyways, let's talk about Sean Strickland here. Kind of coming out of nowhere. And what I mean by that that is, he had a decent run at welterweight, but since moving up to middleweight, he hasn't lost. He made that move back in 2020. This off the back of a very serious motorcycle accident. We saw the photos. I mean, I think there were some that thought maybe Sean Strickland's never going to fight again. And not only has he come back in a new weight class, but he's remained undefeated and picked up some pretty good wins in the process. But I wanted to quickly mention that, he made his UFC debut. I think people forget back in March of 2014, he fought Bubba McDaniel. Remember that name? That was a name that, used to be in the UFC a while ago. Like, I think we forget how long he's been in there, but there's not been a lot of activity. Mainly fighting twice a year, lost to Ponzinibbio early in his career, and then lost to Usman. And I think once he lost to Usman, he was kind of off people's radars in terms of some of the wins he picked up. Because if you look at his wins at welterweight, in fact, I think most of them are against guys that aren't in the UFC anymore, other than Court McKee's still in the UFC, but like Araujo, Tom Breeze, Garcia. I guess Breeze is in the UFC as well, but you kind of get what I'm saying here. He didn't really make a lot of noise at welterweight. And I think it wasn't really until maybe the Brennan Allen fight that people really not only got to see how good he was, but also this sort of crazy side to him as well. I remember the first time I interviewed him was before the Brennan fight, and he was definitely off a bit, but in a good way. I mean, I do enjoy interviewing Sean because he's about as real as it gets. What you see on Instagram, what you see, in an interview is exactly how he is. He's a little bit off his rocker a little bit, but we mentioned it there. The motorcycle accident was off for all of 2019 and was off for most of 2020. He actually didn't make that debut at middleweight until October of 2020, and came back and fought Jack Marshman and got a good win there. But it was the Brennan Allen fight that I think really woke people up. Brennan is someone I've covered for a very long time. Brennan obviously good run in the UFC, had the win over Kevin Holland, and then got absolutely destroyed. Like, I've watched Brennan Allen fight for a while. I've watched his losses against Trevin Giles and Anthony Hernandez and Eric Anders, but I've never seen him beat as badly as Sean Strickland did. So that was a fight that sort of woke people up. Then the Jocko fight was okay. And then Uriah Hall, his last fight. I mean, Hall's a guy that's been in the division for a while, has been sort of up and down. He's fought sort of the who's who. I feel like Strickland took a lot of that thunder that Hall had leading into that fight. So Strickland's definitely become a household name. He's 6'1" with a 76-inch reach in this fight. So he's going to be a little bit smaller than Luke Rockhold. He's 6'1" at a 76-inch reach. Luke Rockhold 6'3" with a 77-inch reach. I've seen Luke Rockhold in person. I mentioned it there. He looks more like a heavyweight, to be honest, than or even a light heavyweight than a middleweight. And it's going to be interesting because Sean, I think, is on the bigger side for middleweight. So just your thoughts on Sean Strickland and the rebirth of his career at 185.
Yeah, Sean Strickland is a guy that I didn't really pay attention to too much when he was coming up, when he even made his debut against Bubba McDaniels. But one thing that I noticed here is that he did start his UFC career at middleweight. He fought twice, won both fights, then all of a sudden decided to go to welterweight and lost to Santiago Ponzinibbio. But the fight that really just popped into my mind, it wasn't even the Usman fight, because at that time Usman wasn't really that popular either. It was the fight against Nordine Taleb, because Nordine Taleb, he's a guy at welterweight. To me, he's not up there as like the Usman caliber type of fighter, but this guy is a hard, rough fight for anybody. And, he's a guy that will get in your face and strike with you. And guess what, Sean Strickland did? He went in there and got that second round finish. And then I think Taleb is very hard to finish, and he finished him. And that actually just started that streak that he's on right now. And like you said, James, most of the guys that he's beaten on this streak, no, not even most of them, almost all of them are still in the UFC. I think do you think that shows you something when a guy's on a streak and most of the guys that he's beaten or finished are still in the UFC, or does that not matter to you, James? I just wanted to get your
I think it does matter in terms of the caliber of opposition. I mean, there's I think someone put out a stat, and I know we'll talk about him later. Like Nick Diaz, I think all of his wins or all of his fights that he's had in the UFC are against guys that aren't even in the UFC anymore. But that's more of a case of he just hasn't fought that much over the years. Whereas with Strickland, or let's say you use another example, I think level of competition is important. I think you have to look at that when you're looking at a fighter. And to me, if someone's still in the UFC and they're not, that usually indicates the level of competition. So in Strickland's case, I think it has helped his case that he's fighting guys that are, sort of mainstays in the promotion. They're not like a contender series guy that went 0-2. He's beating, mainstays on the roster.
Yeah, for sure. And then the Talib fight was great. And then he fought Marshman. Didn't really pay attention to that too much.
Mhm.
But then, like you said, the Brendan Allen fight. Brendan Allen is the guy that I think a lot of people think he's probably a top 10. Maybe even if he reaches his full potential, he'll be a top 5 fighter in that middleweight division. Yeah, man. After that, he won back to back the Uriah Hall fight. But I also think that a lot of these fights stylistically, he just had the advantages over them. You know what I mean? And I feel like maybe this Rockhold fight, it's a little bit different with the long layoff and everything. But yeah, Sean Strickland, you can't take nothing away from him. He was a guy, like I said, I was really paying attention to him, but he did two things that are important in this fight game. Number one, win, and number two, be a character. And he developed into this character. Now we can't forget about him. You know what I mean? He says the craziest things. And I like him when he's free like that, because why? He's saying what's on his, or what's in his heart, man. And then you can't blame somebody for saying that. You know, it might be crazy, it might be controversial, and you might disagree with it, but man, it draws him a lot of attention. And his interview with the Schmo, and I don't even watch his Schmo interviews, but the clips that came out, they were just hilarious.
Yeah, and it's like, it's naturally funny. Like, he's just like he's I can't describe it. It's not like scripted. It's not like, you know, something where he's memorizing the lines like a Cejudo. It's actually just the way he talks. Like, he gave me a couple of really good lines in my interview, and just yeah, he's a guy with no filter. And yeah, I enjoy hearing him talk. I know some stuff he says a little off the line. Don't agree with everything, but a lot of the stuff he says is pretty interesting. All right, let's talk about Luke Rockhold here. 36 years old, which actually, if you think about it, isn't that old for a guy who's been off for as long as he has. We mentioned the height and reach, so he will be a little bit bigger in this fight. His last fight was at light heavyweight, so that's interesting to note, because if you think about it, JHK, Luke Rockhold hasn't fought at 185 since February of 2018. So while the layoff has actually been since July 2019, he hasn't made the middleweight limit. And I might as well mention it now, because I'm sure we'll talk about it in the chat. Nick Diaz, I don't know if you saw earlier tonight, Ariel Helwani reporting that Nick Diaz and Robbie Lawler is now a middleweight fight. This doesn't surprise me, because Nick Diaz hadn't fought at welterweight since 2013. I kind of feel the same thing here with Rockhold. Like, obviously Rockhold will make the weight, but I do think that's a disadvantage for him in the sense that he's a big guy. He's been off for a couple of years, and now he's got to make the weight limit that he hasn't made since 2018. So that's one thing to keep in mind in this fight as well. Other things with Rockhold that we can sort of note, he's taken a lot of knockouts. You know, even prior to him being knocked out by Jan Blachowicz or Yoel Romero or even Bisping, people forget Vitor Belfort knocked him out. That was TRT Vitor. And then I believe he got knocked out also on the regional scene as well. So he has taken some damage, which is, you know, never a good sign. I don't care who you are, what fighter you are. You can be as talented as you want. Once that chin goes, it doesn't matter. Look at Chuck Liddell. That was the tail end of his career. His chin just sort of left. I don't know if Luke's at that point. He is losing the guys that do have pretty good knockout power, but it is an area of concern when looking at this fight as well. So like I mentioned, he's coming off 2 straight losses. First time in his career, actually, Luke Rockhold has 2 losses in a row. He's coming off the loss to Yoel Romero, and then he's coming off the loss to Jan Blachowicz. The Romero fight, I thought he was doing quite well in. It's just a case of Romero, like we've seen before in the 3rd round or later in the fight, he tends to just unload, and he did the same thing to Chris Weidman. He did the same thing to Luke Rockhold in that fight. So don't really fault him there. The Dave Branch fight was even a fight where, yeah, he got the finish in that one, but I don't think he looked outstanding. I'll be honest, JHK, I don't think Luke's been the same since the Bisping fight. I think there's something there, and it could be that he's fighting really good guys. It could be whatever, but that Bisping fight, I remember watching that fight and my jaw hit the floor when I saw Bisping knock him out. And I couldn't believe it. I really couldn't. I didn't think Luke Rockhold was going to lose for a very long time. I remember the night he beat Chris Weidman for the middleweight title. I remember talking to my girlfriend, now wife at the time, and saying, I think this guy's going to hold the belt for a while. And he didn't. He held it for a whole, he didn't even get to defend it. And then he got knocked out by Bisping. And that was clearly a fight where he overlooked Bisping. And to Bisping's credit, I'm not going to take anything away from him, what he's done in his career, but that's a fight Luke Rockhold should have won. So I guarantee he overlooked him, and he paid the price for it. Like I said, got the win over David Branch, but what does that really mean at this point? Lost to Romero, lost to Blachowicz. I mean, a lot of guys finished. Jan Blachowicz, just asked Dominic Reyes. So I'm not faulting him that much for there, but I do have some concerns about that as well. But here's the thing with Luke Rockhold. Like, he's so good everywhere. He's got a really good build, especially for middleweight. He's long. He can use his reach very well. He's got really good striking. He's got a great ground game as well. I think we forget the guillotine choke that he landed on Bisping in the 2nd round when they fought the first time. So we know Rockhold's very well-rounded, but all that doesn't matter if he doesn't have his chin. So if Sean Strickland is able to get in there and get on the inside and land one of those punches like he did against Brennan Allen, it's not going to matter. Luke Rockhold could be the best guy ever. If your chin doesn't hold up, it doesn't matter. So that's a big question in this fight. And you know, obviously on paper, if we saw this fight, you know, even let's say even before he fought Jan Blachowicz, Luke Rockhold's a big favorite in this fight, probably. But now, because he's had the layoff, because he's got knocked out, you're seeing the odds favor Strickland in a lot of cases as well. So just your thoughts on Luke Rockhold. We'll get into our picks in a second here, but just your thoughts on Luke Rockhold and kind of the decline he's had in his career since winning the middleweight title.
All right, first off, Luke Rockhold, if you look at his resume, he's fought the best of the best, man, and
Yep.
he won the title against Chris Weidman, who a lot of people felt like was not going to lose for a long ass time, and Luke Rockhold went in there and dominated Weidman and could have finished him. What was that controversy where it was in Mount? I believe it was like the third round or something like that, right? He could have
Mhm.
won the fight there, but yeah, I agree with you, James, about the Michael Bisping fight. You know what I mean? That's a perfect example of like a fighter overlooking another fighter at the worst possible moment, which is the
Yeah.
title fight, you know, and he took that fight on short notice. Remember, I think Michael Bisping took that fight on like what, a week's notice, and just
Yep.
hopped on a plane, cut the weight, and took the fight. Of course, you're gonna take that opportunity. And man, Bisping, you know, that's what makes him a legend right now. This fight that he lost, Luke Rockhold lost to Bisping. Bisping becomes a legend in that aspect. And then after that, I don't know, was it psychological? Was it physical? Was it his surroundings? I don't know what was going on. Even though he won the next fight against David Branch, after that fight, it just seemed like once he faced somewhat an adversity in the fight, it just kind of like he just crumpled up and collapsed. You know, and you
Mhm.
saw it in the Romero, even though it was competitive. In the Jan Blachowicz fight, man, that one was not competitive at all. Am I wrong? I thought
No.
that fight was completely dominated
No,
by
Jan
Blachowicz.
totally had that one. An interesting thing I'll mention from that fight. So Michael Chiesa had won his fight earlier in the evening. He's doing his media scrum, and it's funny because I guess Chiesa and Rockhold are friends. So Rockhold gets knocked out by Blachowicz. Chiesa's looking at the corner of his eye while he's doing his media scrum interview, and he goes, "Ah, shit!" And he like starts like getting upset or whatever. And I captured it on camera. Unfortunately, the company I used to work for does that footage no longer exists. But if you go look at the Michael Chiesa scrum from when he won on that card, I forget who he beat. I'd have to go look. The card that Blachowicz was on against Rockhold, you can actually see in the scrum Michael Chiesa reacting to the knockout. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But yes, to answer your question, Blachowicz absolutely he controlled the entire fight.
Yeah, another thing that I think was hindering him, like I said, I don't know if it was physical, but maybe this was the physical thing aspect of Luke Rockhold was his leg. You remember his leg? He had
Mhm.
that like big cut or
Yep.
something infection, and then even in the Blachowicz fight, he was wearing the sleeve. That's a big question heading in this fight. Is his leg compromised still, or is he
Yeah.
recovered from that? And is he going to be wearing that sleeve on his leg? You know what I mean? Like, and where is he training? Like, is he with Sanford? Is he with Black Zillions? Is he with AKA? I don't even know, man. This dude is he at Ruka? I think he's at Ruka now, right? I think that's
Yeah.
another aspect of the last couple of years. He was just traveling around. He didn't really have, you know, the the support system that he needed, and maybe that's what he realized when he was in retirement. Like, hey, I need to have the right support system, the right people around me, then I can make a return. Like you said, he's only 36 years old. And after you take a couple years off, 36 years old is not that, you know, old, to be honest with you. And you said he's taken a lot of knockout losses. But I think a lot of these knockout losses were kind of like one shot, or he got clipped and he got finished, which is
Yeah.
different from a 3 round just beat down, right, James?
True. True. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
so maybe he's recovered in that time. I think that, optimistically looking at Luke Rockhold, he's recovered in that time and his mind is in the right place, and physically he's healthy and he could do the things that he needs to do to be an elite fighter. And this fight coming together is beautiful.
Yeah, I should mention that it was actually before it was it was Black Zillions, and then what it become? It was Sanford. What the heck? I'm trying to remember how it all went through. It was they changed the gym names a couple times. It was Black
Yeah.
Zillions and something else, and then it became
Hard
Sanford.
knocks.
Hard Knocks, that's what it was. You're right. Good memory there. So yeah, it was the Hard Knocks when I think when he fought Blachowicz, he was there mainly, and now I think he's at Ruka. I remember there's a video of Bisping coming in with his dog or something and to
Yeah.
kind of interrupt training and stuff. So yeah, I don't know exactly where he is. He's all over the place, but yeah, I think he's back in California, and I think probably splitting time at Ruka and American Kickboxing Academy. But we'll try and keep some tabs. Depends how much media is doing lead up to the fight. That'll be interesting to figure out as well. Okay, let's get to our pick here. Let's get the odds on the screen if we got them yet. I know that there we go. So Sean Strickland, a slight favorite at -155, Luke Rockhold +125. I pretty much agree with the odds here. I think you got to make Strickland the favorite here. More active, has looked great, really hasn't shown a flaw at middleweight. Rockhold, I think on paper is by far the best opponent he's fought, even including Usman. I think Rockhold just being out at 185 on paper, just knowing what he possesses. I think there's a lot of if the old Rockhold was to fight him, I think Rockhold would be a decent favorite in this one. But the fact that we're getting Luke Rockhold, post Jan Blachowicz knockout, post I've been off for a little while, it's very concerning. And typically, unless you're Dominic Cruz, you typically don't come off a long layoff like that and find a lot of success. I mean, there's very few examples of that happening. And a guy who's older, right? Like 36 isn't that old, but still Sean Strickland is 30. That's 6 years age gap. And Sean Strickland's barely taken any damage in his career. So I hate to be kind of predictable here, but I'm going Sean Strickland in this fight. You have to. I'm a big believer in momentum. I think the Uriah Hall fight showed that he could go toe-to-toe with a legit striker and beat him at his own game. And granted, Hall has his own issues. I mean, we've talked about this in that fight, especially when we did the preview for it, where, Uriah Hall is very inconsistent. Luke Rockhold, again, the chin is a bit of a concern with the fact that you're right, he hasn't been in wars, but he's still been knocked out cold. I mean, you could probably find more memes of Luke Rockhold right now being finished than you could of him actually, winning fights. And it's just been, like I said, since the Bisping fight, and I know he's fighting tough guys, like Yoel Romero's no slouch, Jan Blachowicz is the current champ. He's still lost 3 of his last 4 fights. So that's a bit concerning as well, too. I just think with what Strickland's done, the time he's put in, the fact that he's really, kind of found the best system for him, which is go to like all these different camps and it's working for him. And just the fact that just a couple fights ago, I know Brennan Allen's not like a world beater, but that was a good win. Like that was one that really was like, okay, this guy's like not playing. Cause like, had he just beat, Allen by a decision, or maybe it was a late finish or something, whatever, but he went out there and from the opening bell, he just flatlined Brendan Allen. I mean, that was such an important win for him in the weight class. So what I think is going to happen with the fact that this fight is only 3 rounds, so that I think would favor Strickland in the sense, because if it was 5 rounds, maybe that's, because Rockhold has that championship experience, maybe that favors him. I think that favors Strickland, and I think there's a possibility of Strickland getting a knockout in this fight. Now, I don't think it'll be early. Strickland, if you look traditionally at his resume, he doesn't have a lot of like first round finishes typically. I know Brendan Allen was in the first round, but you're seeing second or third round finish in a lot of the cases that he has as well. I know in the regional scene he had a lot of first round finishes, but he's not fighting the same caliber of competition. I think most likely, I think you see a decision, but I think it's a clinic that Strickland puts on. It's a striking clinic. He goes out there 30-27 type thing, and he gets it done over Rockhold. But there is a possibility for a knockout, and if that does happen, maybe take the knockout prop as well. But I have to go Sean Strickland here. I have to. I just, traditionally, history, everything else, I think the version of Luke Rockhold that a lot of people are thinking of, and I've used this term many times, I don't think that exists. I don't think the old Luke Rockhold to beat Chris Weidman is there anymore. Too much punishment, too much time away. Sean Strickland's getting the win. Who are you picking?
Luke Rockhold, people hate him. That's just clear as day, and he gives reason for people to hate him. His interviews, his arrogance, and and maybe being good looking is not always the best thing, right? And that's what happens to Luke Rockhold. And in the fight game, it's the worst thing because you go in there and you get your ass beat if you do something wrong. And that's what's been happening to Luke Rockhold. His last, like you said, last 3 out of 4 fights, he's been knocked out. And and he took the time off. I believe it's 3 years, almost 3 years to the day that he will be returning. And I feel like he's going to be the old Luke Rockhold. And I'm going to take Luke Rockhold in this fight. The reason why, even though, man, Sean Strickland has looked just unstoppable, right? But the thing is, like in his last 2 fights, the Brendan Allen fight was a second round finish and everything. But I think in his last 2 fights against Jocko and Hall, he should have finished those guys. And he didn't finish those guys. And I feel like he sits back and almost gets lost in himself doing what he does. And his strategy is great. Press forward and use that incredible boxing and be fearless. And I feel like that fearlessness against a guy like Luke Rockhold, a guy that everybody's like, he's not going to win. He's done. He's, like, look at his last couple of fights. People are just doubting him and doubting him and doubting him and doubting his skill set. And I still believe he has the skill set. He has the power. He has the diversity in his striking to stand there against Sean Strickland. And I feel like his confidence is back after these years of just sitting around and watching everybody have success. And I feel like that's a part of it too, is like him just watching everybody doing well. And he knows that he could do just as well as them. And it's his time to like prove that this is the next step for Luke Rockhold. This is the next run. This is his run, his second run for the title. And it starts with Sean Strickland. And I feel like this is a great matchup. Just on paper, it's just a phenomenal, just striking battle that we're going to see against each other. But I think that Luke Rockhold is just overall a better striker. And I feel like he's going to go in there with like one of those mentalities of it's everything or nothing against Sean Strickland. And I don't know, man. I kind of doubt Sean Strickland's knockout power. His knockout power, maybe volume, he'll be able to knock him out.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's going to be able to just like knock him out like a Blachowicz or a Romero.
Good point. Yeah,
you know?
no, very, very good point. I mean, Strickland's not a power puncher, right? Like it's,
Yeah.
it's just, he's more of a volume guy, kind of like, I don't know, like Nick Diaz, right? Like, or the Diaz brothers, they're more volume guys as opposed to like, like straight up power punchers. One last thing I'll mention that, and I'm not going to sway your opinion by saying this, but I do want to point this out. I think people forget that Jan Blachowicz fight, if you remember, because I remember, that was supposed to be the fight that he was going to win and then fight John Jones. Do you remember that? Because the whole AKA thing, right? DC's his teammate, all this stuff. That was what they were trying to set up with Rockhold fighting John Jones. That didn't happen. Jan Blachowicz spoiled all those plans and sort of took it out. And that kind of brings me to my next point. Who's the pressure on in this fight? It's on Luke Rockhold, 100%. He's 36. He loses this, he's done as a contender. I don't care what people say. You're done. Because you can't go back. Like, even if he went back, maybe he goes back to 205. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know what happens there, but the pressure is undoubtedly on Luke Rockhold in that fight, in my opinion, anyways, because like he's the former champ. He's the guy that's, supposed to come back and make this resurgence. That's not going to happen. If Sean Strickland loses, guess what? He lives to see another day. He's 30 years old. He'll be back. He'll absolutely be back. Will Luke Rockhold be back? I'm not so sure. So that's another reason why I like Sean Strickland.
Well, going back to that Blachowicz fight, I feel like they pressured him into taking that fight at 205. I don't really think that he wanted to go up because a lot of people are like, oh, you're cutting too much weight. You're gigantic, like you mentioned earlier. You saw him; he looks like a light heavyweight, maybe even a heavyweight. And I think that was the worst thing for him, is to just like, oh, I don't need to cut that extra pounds. Maybe I could just kind of chill out a little bit during camp. And that's the worst thing you can do. A lot of mistakes probably were made throughout the last 4 fights. And I think like he's realized that, and he's going to come back with a clearer head, and man, he's going to be high flying, man. Even Rockhold, he doesn't have that one punch knockout power either. So it's going to be a fight that's not, I don't think it's going to be over to the end. But if it does go to the ground, I got to give my advantages to Luke Rockhold. If he does take him to the ground, or if Strickland does take him to the ground, I think Rockhold does hold the advantage, much more submissions. But I don't think it's going to the ground. They're going to stand up. They're going to be talking shit to each other in their face, like just straight up, and it's going to be a bloody mess. But I think Luke Rockhold will win.
There you go. So he is going Luke Rockhold. I am going Sean Strickland. We will see when that fight takes place. And by the way, that's at UFC 268, November 6th. So I kind of stumbled out of the gate just because there's so many fights coming up. I always forget what's what, but really excited for this one. And hopefully I'll get something with Sean Strickland before the fight. I probably won't get anything with Rockhold, but that's fine because he was eating during the Submission Radio interview. So I'm good. I'll interview someone else. All right, let's get to questions. Again, we like to focus on, this fight or the division, but there's so much going on. I don't mind talking about other stuff as well. I'll start with J-Spec Driver. What's up, gents? Is this the new Showtime? This is. We're going in the evenings. We had to switch things up. Cool by me. It's going to have dinner right after this, and it's later in the day, so I got all my interviews out of the way. So I'm just getting things out. What time is it for you? It's 8 in the morning where you are right now?
9:30.
9:30. There you go. So it's in the morning. So yeah, there you go. It works out for both of us as well. But great to have you here, J-Spec Driver, one of our biggest supporters on the channel, and we really appreciate it, man. J-Spec Driver 702. If Hooker lands in Vegas late Thursday, makes weight Friday, does he shut every excuse made for missing weight? I just want to quickly comment on this, and then I'll answer his question. They should just make it a catch weight. Why the hell are they trying to get them to cut all this weight with both of them? They're both going to come in, and why make them, kill themselves? Just do the fight at welterweight or something. I don't know. Or catch weight.
Yeah,
or something.
I think once Hooker lands and Nasrat lands, I think like you weigh them in immediately and decide, okay, we're gonna fight it this way. Like you said, a catch weight. Not like, okay, you have this much weight to cut, go and cut the weight. Let's make it a healthy fight. You guys sacrificed so much just to put this fight together. And why does the UFC not do that, man? I don't like, every other promotion does it. One Championship they're great at doing it. They, like if someone misses weight, they automatically make it a catch weight so the fight could actually happen. They don't just like, just get rid of scrap fights and stuff like that. So yeah, they need to watch Hooker. They need to watch Nasrat when they land. But Nasrat seems like he might not make it. You know what I mean? Like I guess he did send some more information to the embassy or whatever to get his visa. But man, when the embassy is holding your passport and everything, it's just like you can do nothing. You could just yeah, you could go to MMA Twitter.
Isn't that why
like
you have a
Dan.
manager though? Like I saw all that and I'm thinking to myself, like, don't you pay this super manager to do all this stuff? Like, shouldn't he be the one tweeting this stuff out and not him? Like isn't that why you have a manager? That was one of the things when I saw that. I'm kind of like, okay, like you have a manager who prides himself on being the quote unquote best in the game. Why are you not on the phone with the embassy? Maybe he is, but he should be the one tweeting that, not the fighter. Anyways, that's my thoughts. Because why even have a manager? Should be going the extra mile for it. Anyways, maybe he is, and maybe we don't know. Maybe I'm being hard on the guy, but whatever. I'm just trying to stick it to him. And also, Terrence McKinney, I know, has stepped up and said he was willing to fight Dan Hooker, and all the fans are loving it. And listen, Terrence McKinney, great follow on Twitter, great guy. He's actually trains out of the in the Pacific Northwest, so got a little spot in my heart for that as well. But I mean, if I'm Dan Hooker, obviously you want to fight, but that fight makes no sense for him. Why would you fight an unranked guy who has one UFC fight and come in there? What if he loses? It's going to look terrible. So I admire Terrence for taking the shot, but fans never look at this stuff. They're always like, yeah, we just want to see the fight. But it's like, for Dan Hooker, he's coming off 2 losses. This is a big fight in his career. If he loses again, everyone's saying he's done, he's washed up, and he's fighting an unranked guy. Like, this is why you have rankings. There should be, I don't know who's available. Maybe there isn't anyone, but there's got to be someone that's a little bit more established than Terrence McKinney. And again, this is nothing against Terrence. It's everything against the whole, matchmaking, right? Because we look at a prime example. Remember when Alex Hernandez fought Beneil, that totally screwed up the rankings because Hernandez knocks out Beneil Dariush. And then Dariush was ranked, and then it took him forever to get to back to where he is. So just a word of caution for the fans out there that want to see that fight. I want to see Dan Hooker fight too. I'm on board there, but there's got to be another opponent there than Terrence McKinney. Just my 2 cents as well.
Yeah, well, when I talked to Dan after this fight was put together, he paid respect to Terrence, but at the same time, it's just like, yeah, doesn't make sense at all. Dan's a smart guy. He knows the game. He knows what he's doing. Everything that he does is pretty much calculated. A lot of people just think that he's this Kiwi that's just talking crazy, but he's not, man. He knows the game. He understands everything that's going on. And Terrence doubled down, like you said, and he said, "I'm in Vegas. I'm waiting for Dan Hooker to land, and I'm gonna fight him." You know what I mean? And Dan even responded and said that that's a genius move. It is a genius move because why? It kind of pushed pressure on the matchmakers to put Terrence in there, especially if there's like a lot of support for Terrence and there's no fight happening. If Dan lands, Nasrat doesn't land, of course you're gonna have to put something together, right? It's not like you just leave Dan off. He traveled all the way to the stateside. I don't even think you can go back to New Zealand until next year, which is crazy to me.
Really?
And
I don't know the logistics of that. Oh wow.
Yeah, some wild stuff like that, man. It's just did you see that their City Kickboxing is thinking about just moving their whole team to the States?
No, I didn't see that. That's interesting.
Because of the voucher situation in New Zealand. Like you get 4, I guess you could get 4 tries in the lottery, and if they don't pick you, then your chances are gone. And that means if you're a fighter, 4 tries, you're gone. That means you can't even fight. If you do fight, you have to wait until the next year to get back into the country for a voucher.
It's nuts, man.
That's
We're
insane, man.
Living in weird times for sure. Devin Clark losing his teeth reaction, Eon Hulk's hands, or crap mouth guard. No, it's the Hulk hands, I think. I don't know. Well, I don't know. I wouldn't really know about the mouth guard thing, but it could be a bit of both. Yeah, poor Devin Clark, man. God, that's got to suck. And what a warrior he is. Nicest guy ever. I know you've interviewed him. I think I have a number of times. Just a great guy. Kind of sucks that it happens, but hey, we're in a sport where people punch each other in the face. Bad things are going to happen, right? So
yeah, I wish it was like a fight of the night. At least he would have got somewhat compensated for what happened. His middle of his jaw broke off or something.
It was like the bottom of his jaw, like you saw, it was like separated. It was nuts,
that's
man.
Insane, man. I think it happened to Corey Anderson too, the same exact injury. And I remember seeing like they had to cut open the bottom of his mouth to adjust
put it all back in,
sew it all and all that stuff.
That's why you warning to you people out there, probably not our audience, but the people who talk crap on fighters, this is what they have to go through. Like it's and then they got to hear from other people. Oh, you suck. I lost a bet. All that stuff. So that's why.
And tagging them, and
tagging exactly.
DMing them, and it's like, man, come on, guys. If you're betting, do you message the Los Angeles Lakers when they lose and when you bet on them? Come on, man. You're such an idiot.
Crazy. Thoughts on Leon Edwards ducking Masvidal, then catching crap from everyone, now all of a sudden wanting that fight? I don't know. This is sort of I didn't see Leon's interview with Ariel yesterday. I missed it, but my kind of thinking with Leon Edwards is he's pulling a Tyron Woodley. He thinks that he can just get the title shot. Like, I think he's the only one who thinks that. I think everyone else is kind of like, no, like if you had the title, like if like Dana White would have said you had the title shot, Like, I think he's playing a very dangerous game here by trying to sit on the sidelines and waiting for the winner of Usman and Covington. Saying that, though, like, I mean, the whole Masvidal thing, like, I've always thought that's a favorable matchup for Leon. But then saying that, because here's the problem. Like, let's say he fights Masvidal, that, and let's say he fought Masvidal and he beat him, there'd be people out there saying, well, Masvidal had 2 losses to Usman. So what does that win mean? You know what I mean? Like he's kind of in like a really weird situation. I told the fight they should do, and I've said this forever, and I know Leon won't take it, is do the Luque rematch. That makes a lot of sense. Luque's right there for a title shot. He's waiting in the wings. Luque lost to him. There's some incentive for Leon. You already beat the guy. Show you can do it twice. Show you can beat someone. The problem with the Gilbert Burns fight, like I've always mentioned, is that if he fights Burns and Burns wins, what the heck happens? He's not going to rematch Usman now. So that screws up everything. So at least with Luque and Edwards, the winner of that fight would be a rematch for Usman. That happened. If Luque wins, it's a fresh fight. With Leon, it would be a rematch from 2015. No one even, probably a lot of people even forgot they probably fought. So that's the fight they should have done. But we'll see. Maybe that fight still does happen, but it happens after 268, so to speak. So as far as Edwards and Masvidal, like, I see both sides of it, but also Leon's he's got to fight. Like, we're at the point now where you might as well just wait and see what happens with this fight. There's no sense in him taking a fight now, but see what happens, or offer to be the backup for that fight in case something happens. I don't know.
And Leon Edwards is in this position, and it's kind of ironic that he's from the UK, because it's like he's separated on this island all the way across the world, and everybody stateside is doing their thing on in North and South America, with Luque and stuff like that. But I also think Luque is the fight to make, but Luque is about to get an even bigger fight, which is the fight that Leon just took and won, which is against Nate Diaz. And I think now Luque is like, why would I want to fight Edwards? It doesn't do nothing for me, because he's not even the #1 contender. He's not even like, they haven't committed to him for any kind of title shot at all. Maybe behind closed doors, but what does that mean? That doesn't really mean anything, does it, nowadays? No. Even if Dana White comes out into the press conference after the next pay-per-view this weekend and says Leon Edwards is next in line after who's fighting right now? Oh, Covington. It doesn't really mean that, you know what I mean? Dana White says so much stuff that we don't, we just get lost in the sauce with him. With Edwards, I don't know what you do with him now. I do not know. Luque sounds great, but he's going to be over there fighting Nate Diaz most likely in the near future.
I don't think so. Just because Nate tweets something, I really have my reservations. I think the only way he fights, because here's the thing, the reason the Leon fight, I kind of understood it after the fact, is like, okay, Nate really wants to fight for a title. He thinks that's going to happen. This is a shortcut to that. If Nate fights Luque, and even if he wins, he's not getting a title shot, I wouldn't think. Maybe he does, but that seems kind of weird if that was the case. I think that's a lot of social media talk, those two. I don't think that fight happens. If it does, then it just leads more to my theory that I think Nate's trying to get out of his contract and go box the YouTubers, right? That's always been my theory.
I think that's the fight that they're going to make. And I think in Luque's eye, or in Nate Diaz's eyes, Luque is like a good matchup for him. In Nate Diaz's eyes, not in my eyes. I think he thinks Luque is in that top 5. He's a great matchup for him, and he's I don't know. It's just like, I think they kind of start to respect that Luque is not out there talking shit about him either. Luque has been very respectful to Nate Diaz in everything he said about him. Gilbert has been talking crazy. I don't think he wants to fight him just because he's been talking crazy about him. So there's a little respect thing going on right there. You know what I mean? And I think if he beats Luque, I think Luque is a gateway to the title, to be honest with you. Even though Nate's lost his last 5, I don't even know, 4 fights or something like that, right?
Well, no, he lost two in a row now, because he lost to Masvidal, and then he lost because he beat Pettis before that. That's what got him the BMF.
Even though if he loses 2 in a row and he beats Luque, if he fights him, I think the UFC jumps him right into the title contention. And Usman's going to push for it too. They don't care, you know what I mean? They don't care what the fans think. They just care about what's important to them, which is what? The belt and money. Yeah. And that's what they want. So with Leon Edwards, he doesn't have either of those, right? Which is shitty, because he's on like a 30-fight win streak and nobody really cares about it.
Just quickly on the Diaz brothers, we'll get on to the next question. I'm saying this, and I think we talked about this before. If Nick beats Robbie Lawler this weekend, don't be surprised if he fights Usman. Or, well, assuming the winner of Usman and Covington, but I think it's going to end up being Usman.
I think he fights Adesanya.
Who? Usman?
No, Diaz. This fight's going to be at middleweight.
That's true. Yeah.
And the thing is, if you look at it stylistically, Diaz is not going to want to fight Usman. He's
No,
a
I
wrestler.
no, of course, but I'm just thinking like if the thinking is that they like if the UFC want like because you got to look at like Usman wants to fight Diaz, right? I'm
Mhm.
sure they could make the money work or whatever. Like I agree, Diaz would get slaughtered against Usman. It wouldn't even be close. You just on the wrestling alone. But I think that's you never know. That's a possibility. The UFC doesn't seem to the Diaz brothers are the exception to the rule. Again, Nick Diaz doesn't want to fight in forever. But it wouldn't matter because he's Nick Diaz. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of weird like that. But yeah, you're right. So obviously, if he's fighting at middleweight, maybe he considers going up to 185. But then that's even a mess right now because they're trying to do him in Whitaker. I don't know. We'll
Yeah.
see. There's
But
so many possibilities.
the thing is, like history has shown us that they will push Whitaker to the side for the next guy, right?
Mhm.
And it could happen again. I'm just saying. I'm just throwing it out there that Diaz wins. He stays at middleweight because he fought Anderson at middleweight too. You know what I mean? It's not like he's never fought there at that weight class. He might be small for it, but still, it's a chance to fight for the title and you fight Adesanya. And I guarantee you, Adesanya is going to fight Diaz. That's a
Yeah.
great fight. They're going to talk crazy to each other, even though Diaz says that he's turned a new leaf and he's not talking trash in the cage and all that stuff. Come on, man. That's not the Nick Diaz we want to see. We don't want to
Mhm.
see the nice guy Nick Diaz come back. That's even though I don't even really, to be honest with you, a lot of people are like, I'm looking at social media, right? And a lot of people are all like, oh, Nick Diaz fight week. And I'm so excited. Really? Are you really that excited? Are you the same people that were talking shit about Nick Diaz because he's not coming back? Or he's just sitting around doing
No,
nothing? Or
it's
he's gone
no
crazy?
matter what, it doesn't. The Diaz brothers, like I said, there's so many of them. There's still a huge draw. The fact that like this is even a 5 round fight on a UFC pay per view, and the guy hasn't fought since 2015, hasn't had a welterweight fight since 2013, just speaks volumes of how big the Diaz brothers are. It's like I said, they're exception to the rule. But anyways, spent a lot of time on the Diaz brothers, and now we got another question about the Diaz brothers. Is UFC 266 Lawler versus Diaz bigger to fans to you guys than both the title bouts? In terms of what fans are saying, absolutely. That's like the people's fight of the night. Like if you look at Nick and Robbie, they are bigger names, unfortunately, than the other, the title fights or whatever, so to speak. But for me personally, it's Ortega and Volkanovski, 100%. Like that fight is so interesting to me, not only just the fight itself, but then also like the bad blood. Like that fight really that's one of my fights of the year for sure. Nick and Robbie will be fun, but it's not, it's not something that I'm gonna like, probably want to watch back again and again. It's going to be nothing close to their first fight, which I think, did I send you that clip from, I'm not going to mention the outlet, but the title of the title of the interview with Robbie Lawler was Robbie Lawler not relying on first fight against Nick Diaz. No kidding. Cause the fight was 17 years ago. Like whoever wrote that title should be fired. That's stupid. So anyways, that's enough Diaz talk for now, for the next 5 minutes as well.
Is the
So
Diaz, is before we move on, is it 5 rounds?
5 rounds. Yeah.
Oh my
The
gosh. You
Diaz
got
rule.
three straight 5 round fights?
Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna have a
Yeah,
lot
but
to
I
talk
don't.
about on Saturday. Which, by the way, if you guys are watching here, make sure you come over to my channel, youtube.com/Lynch on Sports. JHK and I are going to be doing a hangout on Saturday for the pay-per-view. We're back and excited to do that. So I'll plug that at the very end again. Why is everyone sleeping on Blades versus Rosenstrike? That's true. I mean, that's kind of the forgotten fight on this card, and a
Yeah.
big fight for Curtis Blades because he's got to bounce back from that loss to Derek Lewis. And for Rosenstrike, it's another opportunity of getting over the hump, right? He fought Gone, he faltered. I lost to Nagano as well. So it's a lot at stake for both guys, but it's just because, I mean, neither of them are really like outgoing, like super big personalities, great interviews, but that's why. And I think that's good for both guys, to be honest. I think the pressure for both these guys is at an all-time high, especially for Blades, right? Like he's coming off a loss, at least with the Rosenstrike, he's coming off a big win. So the reason everyone's sleeping on it is because it's Nick Diaz fight week. I think if the Nick Diaz fight wasn't on here, there'd be more talk about Blades and Rosenstrike, but there isn't. So, and I think that fight's in the prelims too, right? So that's another reason why it's not as prevalent. Because Calvillo and Andrade is on the pay-per-view.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the main card here. Andrade Calvillo. Oh no, Blades and Rosenstrike is on the main card. Well, yeah, again, I don't know why it is then. Who knows?
Well,
Sorry.
you
Go
know,
ahead.
with this fight with Blades and Rosenstrike, the reason why everybody's sleeping on it is because there's so many fights on that card on the
Yeah.
pay-per-view. Like you said, it's Nick Diaz fight week, and then you got Valentina, which if Valentina wins this fight, I think she has the record now for the most consecutive title defenses by a champion in the UFC, which is nuts to me because it seems like she's the newest champion out of all of these
Yeah.
champions. And she's
2018 she won
just
the title.
continues fighting. Is it just a testament of how, I don't want to say there's a huge gap in talent? Is there a huge gap in skill set, or is it just that she's just great. I mean, we're watching one of the greatest of all time.
It's a combination of both. It's a new division, relatively new for the UFC, right? 2018, Nico Montano was the first champion, which a lot of people forget. I actually got that trivia question wrong a couple of years ago. We were doing that. I said Valentino was the first champ, but I forgot that Nico technically did win on the Ultimate Fighter. But it's that, and it's just Valentina's so good. Like, no one's come close to doing anything to her. Like, that's the difference. It's like she's so dominant that she's having these fights where they're not even close. Like, she's beating everyone decisively, and she's finishing girls that don't get finished, like Jessica Ai and Caitlin Chukagian and Andrade. I know has been finished, but still, like, to finish her the way she did, it was impressive. So it's a combination of that, and Nunes is sort of doing the same thing at 135. So that's basically what we got as far as that fight goes. Last thought, Luke Rockhold screws us all over by wrestling Sean to death. The wrestling is an interesting aspect, but I mean, Sean Strickland's, he's training with pretty high level wrestlers himself in terms of the camps that he's at. Like I said, he's all over the place. He customizes things to his liking, so he's getting the training that he wants. He's actually, I think, the only fighter, maybe I'm wrong about this, I think he's the only fighter that is able to train at both Syndicate MMA and Extreme. And I know, and they're not that there's any bad blood between the gyms, but you just don't do that. But he's allowed to because there's so much respect there for the coaches with Sean Strickland, from what I've heard. That's why.
Yeah, so respect from the coaches, and probably just because it's hard to like keep them around for an extended period of time, right? They like to have little short spurts of Sean Strickland, not an everyday situation with him. So
good to hear from Lucas here. He says Sean O'Malley versus Brian Kelleher is rumored. Who do you got? It should be noted, and glad you put rumored in there, because Mike Heck yesterday came out and said, yeah, the fight's not signed. Who do I got in that fight? I think I give an edge to O'Malley in that one. I love Brian Kelleher, great guy, hockey fan like myself, great interview too. But I just think that Sean's power and his speed are going to be a little bit too much. But saying that, if there's anyone to pull off an upset over Sean O'Malley, it's Brian Kelleher. I mean, we've seen him take out a number of prospects. He's a guy that you can't count out. Yeah, I'd love to see it. I don't know that if that fight happens. I know they sort of agreed to it on Twitter, but I mean, we've seen this how many times until we actually see it signed and delivered. I thought the fight they should have done was a Sun Sao. That made way more sense. Sun Sao's ranked. It's a winnable fight at this point. I think we can all agree a Sun Sao's sort of fallen off a cliff since losing to Marlon Moraes. That would have made more sense. Instead, Ricky Simon gets that fight. So there you go.
Yeah, Brian Kelleher.
Yeah.
Man, he's doing a phenomenal job of trying to get this fight.
Yeah.
Because he just put the bait out there on Twitter, and everybody just ate it up. I mean, of course there was going to be news outlets just writing about it. Like, did Sean O'Malley sign the fight? What about that video of Sean O'Malley and Conor McGregor just, at the Dallas Cowboys game, just like getting into it, just like talking about something. I like what Paul Felder said. They were talking about calf kicks, what I mean, like how to defend.
Probably,
them.
yeah, exactly.
That's great. Yeah. But yeah, this fight, I don't think it happens. This is just my opinion. I think Sean O'Malley's gonna fight a ranked guy coming off like losses or a loss, and he knows what he's doing. He's gonna find a matchup that's gonna be best for him, and I don't think Keller is a good matchup.
Lucas also says, heard any intel on Tony Ferguson's next fight? Not a peep. The last thing I heard from Tony Ferguson that I think he has another child on the way. And I know he's helping Ben Saunders train for his last fight. Ben Saunders not in the UFC anymore. He's on the regional scene, but they're good buddies. They kept in touch, and I think remotely they were working together or something. But that's the last I've heard of Ferguson. I don't know. I've always said this: the fight to make with Tony Ferguson is Donald Cerrone. Do the rematch. It's a notable name. It's a competitive fight. I don't want to see Tony Ferguson. Like, people are like, oh, he's got to fight like Fiziev, or no, like, I don't want to see Tony Ferguson go out like that, because I picked Fiziev in that fight. I would. And I know Tony's losing to good guys, but he deserves more respect than that. I think a veteran matchup, kind of like we're seeing this Saturday with Lawler and Diaz, makes sense for Tony Ferguson next. So that's what I would do.
With Tony Ferguson, I don't even know what to do with him, man. Like you said, the Cowboy Cerrone fight is good, but I would not give him anybody that's coming up like a Fiziev. You would never want to give him a Fiziev, like a Fiziev or an Armin or one of those guys. I don't think that will do anything for Tony Ferguson except for him losing his luster even more. You know what I mean? Like, people will just be like, yeah, Tony Ferguson's washed. He's finished. If he goes out and loses to one of those guys. So like you said, find some. I wish Gilbert Melendez was still around, because I would just put him against Gilbert Melendez. I think that would be a great fight, but he's not. And Ferguson, he's running out of options, to be honest with you. I mean, we would think Ferguson would fight so many guys, but fights that make sense, we're running out of options for Tony Ferguson right now. They need to put him in there with somebody and get him a win, and then he could, like, open up his options right there. But I don't even think Cowboy's gonna fight. To be honest with you, like he doesn't seem like he's fighting anytime soon. I've seen some videos of him just like boating or something. I don't know, man. So I guess that's what he does normally. But yeah, doesn't seem like he's training too much.
2 donks and 1 pod. Good to hear from you guys. They're saying, is Anthony Pettis next fight a legit make or break it fight? I don't think it matters. He's in PFL. Yeah, he's lost some fights. I just think that, he's just gonna fight as long as he can, but he's not what he used to be. Yeah, go ahead.
Under the circumstances, right?
Yeah.
There's got to be circumstances to be a make or break fight, right?
Yeah.
And with Anthony Pettis, he's accomplished so much throughout the years, and he holds many respectable belts. And when you go to the PFL, at the end of the day, the belt is it's a nice little trinket that you can hang on the wall. But that $1 million, I think that's what's attracting Anthony Pettis more than anything, and his opportunities outside the cage. I don't even think he's gonna fight MMA next. I think he's gonna be boxing soon. I just have a feeling that that's what he's gonna do. That's the feeling that I got when I talked to him during the PFL season, that he's gonna go and box during this off season. I think that's what we're gonna see.
We'll do one more question, then we'll get to our underdog picks for the week. Dave says, I think the same. I think Nate wants to wants to up us up to contract fights, leave with win, and co-promote big box fights. Yeah, I think the Diaz brothers, like, they're seeing what's going on here. They see the eyeballs on these fights. Like, if a guy like Woodley can go there and fight a Jake Paul or whatever, there's money to be made. So I think the YouTube thing's not going to go away. I think there's a market for it, even though I guess the Jake Paul and Woodley fight did decent numbers. It was the Holyfield one that didn't, but a lot of people are kind of turned off. They're like, why is a 60-year-old fighting? Like, we don't want to see that. We'll see a YouTuber fight some MMA guy, but we don't want to see an old, like, super old guy as well. So yeah, that's sort of my thoughts on that. But yeah, I think the Diaz brothers are trying to get out of there as well. Okay, let's get to our underdog picks of the week. We're going to go with UFC 266. Because Contender Series is on as we're speaking, so obviously you're not going to do that anyways. I don't think we've ever done a Contender Series underdog pick. Okay, so my underdog pick of the week is, we're going to go in the lightweight division. Jalen Turner is a plus 100 underdog against Euros Medic. Now, look, Medic absolutely has looked great so far. I still have my questions about him, though. He's a guy that's had pretty easy competition on the regional scene. Little bit of a Edmund Shabazian vibe to him, just a bit in terms of who he's fought, and I know he's got a lot of promise and stuff. But Jalen Turner is a guy that you look at his losses, right? He had the suicide mission against Vicente Luque in his UFC debut, which, I mean, I guess you want to get in the UFC, you got to take your opportunity. But like, a lot of people would have lost that fight. And then he had the one, I think it was the bad fight against Matt Frivola, right? He had that one as well. But here's a guy that's pretty big for the weight class. Mind you, so is his opponent, but he's 6'3" with a 75.5 inch reach. Euros Medic is 6'1" with a 71 inch reach. So Turner going to be bigger, which he usually is. And he's been on, I think he's been on quite the roll that people forget. Like, he's actually won 3 of his last 4, just the one loss to Frivola. Like I said, you can cancel the Luque fight. He's been off for a bit, but after speaking to him, it's by design. He's a guy that wants to, really, be careful about what fights he's taken and sort of ease into it. He had some injuries as well, but I think this is a good opportunity, especially with the fact that here's a guy that's got a lot more UFC experience. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 UFC fights. And he's taking a guy on a Medic who's undefeated, but he's only got 1, 2 UFC fights, 1 UFC fight. He beat Alon Cruz, who's not even in the UFC anymore. So this seems to me like an opportunity where we could see an upset. So, I know there's some other fights where the odds may be off, a little bit, but I feel the most comfortable picking Jalen Turner. And I didn't put my picks in. I think it was last week I did them early. So I'm going to make a note of that and get them in, but I'm going to go Jalen Turner as my pick, and he's going to be my underdog.
That is a great pick, dude. Jalen Turner. He has been inconsistent, but then when he shows up, man, he shows up and he does really well. I think he's going to show up in this fight. I got 2 underdog picks I think I will take. The first one is Silva. I think she's like 3rd or 4th fight down there. Is that fight happening still?
Yeah, Maria Bueno Silva over Manon Furio.
Yeah, she's a plus 205.
Yeah.
And Furio, she has looked great. I've been watching her since before the UFC, and like, man, she's good and she's great with volume and she has lots of finishes. But I think Silva can go in there and get the upset, man. Just a gut feeling in my mind. You know what I mean? I think that a lot of people are hyping Manon, and I think like Silva, she's a little bit more experience. I think she'll go in there and do her thing. And another underdog pick that I'm gonna take, just because it's just outstanding, is the Lauren Murphy plus 920. I don't know.
Okay.
I just throw some money on there, man. Why not?
Yeah.
Why not? We just talked about. No, we didn't just talk about. But I'm just saying there has been so many fights where like, oh, it's a plus 600 or plus 900. I don't know if there's so many fights, but there have been fights like this, and you just don't know what's happening heading into this fight with a lot of the fighters. You know what I mean? You don't know. Valentina could be injured. We don't know about her injuries, right? And Lauren Murphy might go in there, and Valentina might snap her knee. I don't know. You know what I mean? You don't know what the outcome is. But at plus 920, and it's probably going to go higher, right? As we get
Mhm.
closer to the fight. Why would you not put some money on there? I'd throw a cool like $100 if you have some, and see what happens. If you throw $100 on a plus 920, what do you win back, James?
If you put $100 on a plus 920, you get $920.
Man, that sounds like a good risk right there. And even though I don't think Lauren Murphy is going to defeat Valentina Shevchenko, I would just throw some money on there just to play around. But for real, I think I'll take Jairzinho Rozenstruik at plus 265. I think Jairzinho Rozenstruik could actually win that fight. You know what I mean? I think that
He has a
could
path
go
to
in there.
victory, the knockout.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yes, he has the path to victory. And I think the line is off on this one. I don't think we never did this fight, but I think it should be. I think Blades should be like minus 150. Blades is better on paper. If you look at what he can bring to the table, he's got way more tools than Rozenstruik. He's got good wrestling. I mean, there's a lot of good things to like about Curtis Blades, but coming off a knockout like that, and granted, he did win the first round against Derek Lewis, but anytime you've got a guy with knockout power like Rozenstruik does, just ask Augusto Sakai with the second left in the last round in the round. It's possible he could win by knockout, but I mean, on paper, Curtis should win, but I don't know. I am a little bit nervous about that fight. You know how much I like Curtis, and obviously I like Rozenstruik as well too. But I'm just a little nervous for Curtis as well because so much can change. If he wins this fight, he's back in the driver's seat. If he loses this fight, oh, Curtis Blades has a bad chin. He was overrated. You can already hear that people saying that. Meanwhile, he's beat. Like I had someone comment on how Curtis Blades has a bad chin, and I'm like, well, does he? Or is it the fact that he's getting knocked out by two of the best punchers in the division in Ngannou and Lewis? Like he fought JDS, he fought Mark Hunt, who's got knockout power, fought Overeem, who has knockout power, and he beat all those guys. So what's the difference? So I don't know. We'll see. There's a lot to sort of dig into this one as well.
If you look at the last, I feel 5 UFC events and the percentages of the underdogs winning is damn near 50% right now.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
Underdogs are hot, right? So maybe I think it's going to continue with this pay-per-view. The underdogs are hot. I throw some cash on underdogs, and especially like these fights, you know what I mean, where it's at the highest level when anything could happen. I love it.
Just a couple quick things on 266, and then we'll get some questions. I know we are running out of time here. How about this Martin Sano Jr., who's fighting Matt Samuelsberger? You see the big odds. He's Nick Diaz's buddy. That's why he's getting this fight. He's 4-2. He's coming off a draw in Bellator, and they signed him on. This reminds me of Anderson Silva's friend who fought Lando Venata, and it was same sort of result. It was very, very quick or whatever. But yeah, Martin Sano should not be in the UFC. I don't even know if he could be on Contender Series if you look at who he's fought and what he's done. He's 30 years old. He's 4-2-1. I mean, I know you're helping out your buddy, but come on, that's not very good. And what was the other note? Another underdog I'm not going to pick, but I think has a shot. I think Calvillo, if she can survive the onslaught from Andrade, she's gutsy. Remember, she called out Andrade. She's not afraid of her. She's, a lot of women sometimes are afraid before they even get in there with her. I think Calvillo has an opportunity for an upset as well. So that's what I think. Good card though. We're excited to talk about this one on Saturday. Okay, we'll do like 2 more questions here, and then we'll plug everything at the end. Unacceptable Chattree, your favorite guest here. He says, "What do you make of the Rotang versus Mighty Mouse matchup?" It's weird, right? Because they're doing Muay Thai 1 round, MMA the other round. How's it work again?
Yeah, it's gonna be 4 rounds, I believe. Muay Thai first round, and then MMA second round. Alternating mixed rules with MMA gloves, because in one championship, Muay Thai is fought with MMA gloves, so it's called Super Series. I think it's a great a one-off. You know what I mean? Demetrius Johnson is coming off that title loss. To draw the attention of the U.S. fans, and I've heard rumors that this card with Mighty Mouse and Rotang might be in the U.S. I've heard rumors of this
I've
happening
heard
in the
that
US.
too, but I just wonder with the pandemic how difficult that's going to be. I know the UFC is doing shows, but like you're an international company, you're going to try and come into the US and run a show during a pandemic. I don't know. I could see a lot of red tape there. Isn't it interesting, by the way, that Bellator is going to London, but the UFC hasn't, and they're
Yeah, and they're
supposed
going to
to.
Moscow too,
Yeah. So
and the UFC hasn't.
something. Yeah. That's, I mean, there's a lot of interesting stuff happening behind the scenes. I will answer this question quickly because I want to kind of mention this. Euro, who's asking about the stream time. Yes. So we are on now Tuesdays, not Wednesdays, 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Do the time conversion in Google on your own, wherever you're from. But yeah, we're going to be doing this on Tuesday. And just quickly, you mentioned Holm and Norma Dumont. I have this theory. They're keeping featherweight alive for Kayla Harrison. That's why she's fighting at featherweight. I think you're gonna see some 35ers move up. I think they're gonna try and make a division out of it. That's my theory. I think they're gonna bring Kayla Harrison in next year. So.
Before this fight was put together, Norma Dumont versus Holly Holm, I heard a lot of whispers of like Norma Dumont was going to fight for the title at featherweight after Nunez fought. Who was she going to fight?
Who? Aaron Blanchfield.
No. I'm talking about Nunez, Amanda Nunez.
Oh
yeah,
Amanda...
Nunez was going to defend the title against Juliana Pena, right? And that fight got canceled. I heard that once she defended it, if she did defend it successfully, the next fight was going to be the defense of the featherweight title, and it was going to be against Norma Dumont. This is what I heard on the streets, right? And it just didn't work out that way because what? The fight was canceled. They had to rebook it, and then now you got Norma Dumont fighting for pretty much a #1 contender fight at featherweight. I think that's what it is right now.
Could be. We'll see what happens. That's it for us today. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks for adjusting to the new time. This will be the new time. I know we missed last week, but that won't be happening going forward. I'm just glad we can make this happen, man. I know we had to switch up the times, and you and I, we always work well together. So we made it happen. You know, it's going to be this time going forward. So again, it's Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern time, 5 p.m. Pacific time, right in the middle of, Contender Series. But that's fine because there's people watching fights, and just spread the word if you guys can. Really helps us out a lot. Also hit that like button, hit the subscribe button as well. Download the Fantasy Fanatics MMA app. You can put your picks on there. You can go toe-to-toe with us. I got to get better about putting my picks in. But going forward, you know what? New time, new attitude for me. I'm going to make it a priority. I'll get the picks in on time. We'll do it up. I got a bunch of stuff coming up this week, interviews-wise. I'm going balls to the wall in interviews because I'm making up for last week. I got a bunch of cool stuff in the... I will tell you this. I don't usually mention guests, but I know because you got them. Looks like I'm going to be getting Jangling Lee coming up here on Thursday. So really excited about that. I got to watch your interview to take some notes. So I'll be doing that. But anything you got to plug before we get out of here, JHK? I know I think you're on vacation right now, right?
Yeah, I've been on vacation for a couple of weeks. Make sure you check this the live hangout for UFC 266 on Saturday night, which is Sunday morning over here in Asia. And then make sure you go to SCMP to check out the Fight Companion on Friday night, which is Friday morning in the Western world. We'll be doing one of those for this weekend. Christian Lee versus Ogneun, and Martin Nguyen's back, and a bunch of fights. It's a great card this week for one championship. Just check that out and join us over there.
For myself, for JHK, for producer Michael, for kicking ass like he does every week, we appreciate you guys tuning in. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you next week. Same time, same day. Nothing's changing. The word's out there now, so we really appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your evening or wherever you are right now, and thanks so much for watching.